Welcome to the Untypical Parent Podcast. It's a podcast for parents in additional needs families, and I'm your host, Liz Evans. This is the place to find your reassurance that there is no such thing as a perfect parent. It's here to make the hard bits feel lighter and the good bits brighter. Just quickly before we get started, are you looking for practical ways to support a child experiencing school anxiety? This season, I'm delighted to let you know that the Untypical Parent Podcast is sponsored by Terri Wyse from Wyse Inclusion and Rachel Helm from Helm Education Consultancy. They are experts in inclusive education and supporting children who struggle to access school. Together, they run webinars and workshops to help parents and schools work together and improve outcomes for children experiencing emotionally based school anxiety. If you're supporting a child struggling with school attendance, check the link in the show notes to find out more about how Terri and Rachel can support you. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. I am delighted today to have Dr. Kim Collett join us on the podcast today. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, Liz.
Lovely to have you with you. Us with you. Us with you? You with us. We just leave these things in. We leave these things in. At this time of my life, I have all sorts of weird words come out at different times. Word finding, mind blanks. We just leave it all in because none of us are perfect. Anyway, we have got Kim with us today. Kim, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because that's probably a really good place for us to start, is to think about your background, and then we're going to go off into where the podcast is going to go and what we're going to have a chat about.
Yeah, of course. So I have a PhD in inclusive education, focusing on special educational needs and disabilities. So that is what I talk about. I work at a university, so my life is about lecturing about inclusion and all sorts of things associated with that. And that is sparked by the fact that I'm neurodivergent and disabled myself. So that sparked my interest. And I just feel how important it is to really talk about making sure that every single person feels included and every single person gets a good education and enjoys their learning as well. I think that's really important. So my whole career has been centered around that side of things. But I'm also a parent living in a neurodiverse household, which means that my experiences are not just limited to the academic textbooks, but my lived experience as being neurodivergent myself. Yeah. Living in a neurodiverse household. Yeah. So lots of different things going on.
Do you know you were neurodivergent when you were younger? That kind of did that lead you into your PhD work, or was that kind of a later diagnosis for you?
So I was diagnosed as neurodivergent when I was 14. Okay. After a very long, protracted process of parents trying to get school to believe that I was neurodiverse. So I grew up in a place where they still had grammar schools. So one of the counties still has grammar schools. So I went to one of those, and it was very much in the 90s where it was, you can't be clever and neurodivergent. So, so you can't have both of those things. So why would we bother to look at that kind of thing? So a lot of battles, a lot of sitting there thinking, well, isn't anything wrong with me because nobody said there's anything wrong with me, but there is, and I can't do it, and everyone else can do it, and all of that kind of stuff. So, so as a teenager, and that is what's inspired me basically to go down the route I have in terms of the kind of subjects that I study and things like that. I've always loved learning, but had difficult experiences at school that's really prompted and inspired me to tackle that, or try to tackle that as an academic as well.
And when you say you found things difficult, Kim, because I've got a son that struggled at school really badly, and in the end couldn't manage in school and had to come out, and he's educated at home. But I also struggled at school, not knowing I was dyslexic. Hated school, could not wait to get out of school, absolutely hated it. I suppose I'm just interested how that kind of manifested for you, because for me it was a lot of anxiety. Didn't want to put my hand up, didn't want to answer things, would dread things like reading. I wasn't that allowed in the classroom, and that had a real impact on my mental health and my self-esteem, and that continued into my adulthood and in my job, really.
And I think it's similar, really. So it'd be things like dreading reading aloud in class, and that thought of it was coming up to your turn we had to all read a bit of the Shakespeare play, and then you just sit there the whole lesson. I can't concentrate on anything that's going on because I know it's my turn. And before I'd even start reading, I could hear the sniggers of other children because they knew I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I would say weird things because I couldn't, work out what the language was. And that is just one example of many things. I'm dyspraxic as well as dyslexic, and probably ADHD in there too. So, anything to do with spelling, reading aloud, sitting there thinking, I have no idea what a noun is. How come everybody else is filling out this worksheet on
I
nouns and
still
verbs? I
don't
don't know what
know.
that is. Yeah. No, my children come home and go, right, we did proper nouns today, or we did conjunctions. And I'm like, well, that's great. No idea what that is. Well,
Yeah.
great. And then in PE, because I was, I'm pretty rubbish at anything to do with sport. There were 31 children in our class at secondary school. So when we paired up to do things like tennis, not even my friends wanted to be partners with me because I was so bad. So you just sort of think, you just get left on the sideline. And I think for me, the way I coped with that was to shrink and just try and almost pretend I wasn't there, so that nobody would notice. And I think that's how I've done it. And that did go through into my adulthood as well. That very much kind of that masking, that kind of stereotypical pretending to be who you aren't, trying to hide all of that stuff that you think might get judged. And just I was known as a shy person. People didn't really tend to remember who I was because I would just sort of be very quiet and not say anything in the background. And that's really hard, isn't it, on your well-being, isn't it? If you can't be your authentic self and you can't get that belonging, and your connections you make with people are just superficial because you're not being you,
Yeah.
it's hard, isn't it? It's taken me a long time
Really hard.
to not be that person.
Yeah. And I think you often feel there's something wrong, like you talk about, there's something wrong with me. There's a deficit in me somehow. I need to be more outgoing, more fun to be with. How does everybody get them to everyone
Yeah.
to like them?
Yeah,
How can I
that's
be
it,
one of
isn't
the
it?
popular kids? And
Yeah.
people probably listening to me talk now and thinking, well, I went to school with Liz and I did have a group of friends, but often people would have probably said to me, well, you look like you fitted in fine. I
Mm,
didn't feel it. I didn't. It was such hard work. And I
yeah.
remember times when they would invite me out and I would just make an excuse about going because it was just too exhausting to go. And I just spent the whole time anxious, not really knowing kind of how I fitted into that group. But yeah, school was hard, man. It really hard.
Yeah, really hard. And I think if anybody I went to school with knew that I stood up and talked in front of loads of people and did a bit lectures and stuff, they'd be like, "What?" like,
Well,
like she wouldn't even say anything at school,
yeah.
you know.
Well, I was going to say to you, Kim, how have you got to this point now? Because you're now on Insta. I see you do your little videos and stuff on Insta. You're now getting up and lecturing and talking there. Did something happen to make that change, or did it just gradually come for you?
Well, I think it was at a point where I was doing quite a lot of work in the charity sector. That's what I did when I first graduated. And then I thought I wanted something different and I loved education. So I went back and did sort of postgraduate level study in education. And I wanted to go and do something like be an educational psychologist or something. I didn't have any dreams of being a lecturer. But to do that, I thought, well, I'll get my PGCE, my teaching qualification first, because
Okay.
that to like springboard me onto it. And then I started doing that, and I thought, oh, I don't really want to be a teacher because I have horrible memories about school. But as I started doing it, I realized that I loved doing it. And if I could talk about something that I was passionate about, that I felt I knew about, I found that actually it came quite naturally that I could stand up in front of people and talk about this stuff. And I think because I had horrible experiences as a teenage learner, I think it's made me, or I hope it has, this is my perception, hopefully my students agree. I think it's made me a better educator because I think I get that actually it's quite difficult for some people. And I got some good feedback that the way that I explain things and the way I teach things is quite accessible and easy to understand. And I think it's because I do it the way that I would need it.
Yeah.
Um, and then that just ignited that passion. And I thought, actually, I can do this. I got some good feedback. I enjoyed it. People I'm close to, I talk all the time. It's just those situations where I feel uncomfortable. And that obviously was the majority of my time at school. But
Yeah.
actually, once I started doing it, I realized this is just what I love. And I would quite happily stand in front of hundreds of people and talk about something, as long as it was something I knew something
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
and was passionate about. And yeah, I love it. But if you ask my teenage self, what I would do or say this is what I was going to do, they'd be like,
Yeah.
what are you
Well,
talking about?
if I went
Yeah.
back and said to myself as a teenager, "Do you know what? You're gonna have a podcast," I'd have
Yeah.
gone, "No way would you
Yeah.
put me on a podcast." Yeah. So the students that you teach, Kim, are they teachers to be
Yeah.
teaching?
So there's a range of things that I
Yeah.
teach across. I love learning, like I said, so I've collected degrees and things. So I've got quite a range of different things that I teach across. But the majority of my students want to work in education, or they want to work in some capacity with children. So they are want to be social workers or work in sort of childcare or youth workers, those kind of things. So all of them really are either education or those other services that kind of link in
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Because I know that I mean, I'm not a teacher myself, but I know both my parents have been teachers, and I've got quite a lot of friends that are teachers and have been teachers. And actually, the amount of guidance, information they get around neurodivergent pupils is really small.
Mm,
So what you're
yeah.
doing is bringing up a new generation of teachers, hopefully, with a much better understanding of that.
I think obviously there's so much that teachers have
Yeah,
got to learn in a short space of
yeah,
time. And if we think about, they've got to know all of the subject, all of the curriculum, all of the policies, safeguard, there's so much, isn't
yeah.
there?
There is.
Um,
Yeah,
that actually there is a bit on inclusion, there's a bit on special educational needs and all of that kind of stuff. But unless a teacher goes down the route of being a Senko, the amount that they get is limited
yeah,
compared to what we realistically would need.
yeah,
I think the way that I try and pitch it is that actually these things should be the foundation. And if we can get these things embedded, then actually it will have a knock on effect for everything. If we have and not just children with special educational needs, not just neurodivergence or anything like that, but every single child potentially could face something that makes school difficult for them, even if it's just something small one day. It might not be a massive thing, but there will be times where all children need a little bit of something. So if we can have that kind of belonging, that connection, that inclusivity, just as a foundation, it's going to have such a knock-on effect for everything and every single child, not just those ones that we label as needing the additional help. So I like to try and weave that in to kind of everything. There's that lens that we can apply to absolutely everything to
mm,
do with working with children in education. It's not always easy because you've obviously got a syllabus that you need to do and all of that kind of
yeah,
stuff. But I truly believe it's one of those core things that actually, if we thought about everything from that starting point, I
yeah.
think it would make things a lot better.
So what we need to do then, Kim, is get you in front of the government. Because I truly feel actually teachers a lot of the time want to be able to do these things. They
Mm,
know they're not managing or being able to do everything they can for these kids. But as you say, there's such amount of, I'm using polite words today, rubbish that they have to put up with in the curriculum and all the testing that we have to do and all that kind of stuff. And it being a very narrow curriculum.
mm,
Um, I was talking um, on an article that I wrote, just talking about actually being able to play to your strengths, is that a lot of kids, dyslexic, if you're not the academic type, you're not really nurtured in those ways to be able to really, excel with those things that you're really great at and where your strengths are, because it's not termed as intelligence or, what you need to be able to get these. You've got to be able to recite information at the drop of a hat in an exam, and that's going to somehow make you more great at a job than anybody else. Um, And teachers have a really tough time with that. And I think, and we know at the moment there's lots going on in the world of SEN
hmm
and what the government are going to do next. Who knows? With papers that are coming out. So
Yeah,
what we need to do, Kim, is get you in front of them. That would be nice, wouldn't it? So you
I
could
would
tell
love
them.
that. I mean, I think we need to change pretty much everything. I think if we could just
Yeah.
start again, I think that is going to be the best option for us. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's what I would
No.
love. And I think it's not just the kids that are struggling or the kids that aren't traditionally academic that also find that system difficult.
Yes.
I am an academic person
Yeah.
and I always have been. And I always, did really well on the SATs, the 11 plus that we had, and all of those kind of things. I've got GCSEs are good, but I didn't have a good time at school. And I think what's quite difficult, and I'm going through similar experiences with my kids, is that actually, if you are doing okay academically, you're reaching those benchmarks, the other stuff that you're struggling with isn't given a priority. And not because the teachers don't want to, but they've just got limited capacity to do that. And the system is set up in a way that it focuses on those kids that are either sort of dysregulating, that it's disruptive, or they're not meeting those academic benchmarks. If you're meeting those academic benchmarks, you're behaving. I'll do that in inverted commas because I don't like the behavior type things that we do. If you're doing all of those things, then that's fine. But it's not necessarily for you. You may feel socially very difficult. You may have a really low well-being. You may be masking and all those kind of stuff. So I think it's a whole range of children, isn't it? That actually the system's not working for.
Yeah. And I think, you often hear, don't you, that people think, or the information that they get is that they can't go for EHCPs because their kids are of a certain academic level. And my son was the same. I mean, my son's got immense level IQ. He's a bright kid. And even though emotionally he was falling apart, his mental health was in bits, that kid somehow was still achieving at school. So on paper looked fine, but actually we knew in the background he wasn't. And it took us quite a while to get through that bit of, well, he's achieving. He won't be for long.
Yeah, that's it. And at
now
what
I
cost?
Can't get him into school. Yes.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
At what cost?
Yeah, and that's like you can mask all day at school, and then you come home and that mask drops, and then you've got this massive, like after school restraint collapse where all of it comes out.
Yeah.
And you can't cope and everything like that. But school don't see that. That doesn't get written down. Or, obviously, parents can present that information to schools, and schools can take that and they can do stuff with that and they can offer support. But it's not as easy to be able to then kind of get that support if at school everything is okay.
Yeah,
it's hard. It is
hard. It is. And I think what we were going to talk about today, because I really wanted people to kind of get to know you, Kim, because I think what people might think is that, well, Kim knows all this information. She goes and she teaches about it, and she must be the perfect parent. She's got to be the perfect parent because she knows all this stuff. So I'm going to ask you, Kim, are you the perfect parent?
Should I say yes? Yes, I am. No, far from it. I mean, I don't think the perfect parent exists. And I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? That we see all of this stuff and we think, I'm not as good as her. I'm not as good as him, or, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, the perfect parent just doesn't exist. I think what I find is exactly that. I mean, I could list my qualifications. I could list what I do as a job. I could talk to you for hours about what all the science says, about what all of this evidence about what makes the best parenting style, teaching style, all of that kind of stuff for children with special educational needs, neurodivergent and all that kind of stuff. But knowing it is one thing, putting it into practice is something completely different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen. I'm very privileged because I have this knowledge, I have this understanding, I've got this experience, which means certain things will be easier for me than someone who doesn't have that. I understand the terminology, I understand how the system works, so I can advocate because I understand what all of that means, and I can go to meetings and I can use words and things that make people think, oh, well, she does know what she's talking about, and so on. And I can recognize certain things that are happening. But not necessarily. Like, for example, with my eldest, I didn't realize that he was neurodivergent until school said, I think he's neurodivergent. And I thought, well, how did I not know that? How did I not spot that?
Kim,
I just thought he was quirky.
Exactly the same as someone said to me when they were working with my son, do you think he might be autistic? And I went, no. Do you know what I do as a job?
Yeah. It was just actually that. The head teacher said, he's been having a few problems with this, that, and the other. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, all children do. And he was like, I think he's neurodivergent. And then you start thinking back and you think, oh, of course he is, because all of this stuff makes complete sense. But, so definitely not a perfect parent at all. And I think being neurodivergent myself as well, you throw that into the mix, don't you?
Yeah.
And you've got your own overwhelm, your own sensory kind of limits, your own kind of things that you're dealing with. And when you pass all that all into like a Monday morning, for example, everyone's tired because it's the weekend, it's Monday morning, nobody really wants to get out of bed. You've got, packed lunches to do, you've got homework that needs finishing off because you didn't do it at the weekend, uniforms, you don't know where they are, all of that kind of stuff. And you think, like, how do I sit there and do exactly what I would preach to do if I was lecturing? Yeah, okay, right, well, let's be calm and co-regulate and take time and ease in. We think, well, I can't do that. I've got 10 minutes before we need to be
Yeah.
out of the door. It's not going to happen. I'm feeling stressed because I'm tired and I know that I've got these meetings and all of this kind of stuff. It's not going to happen. And I think we need to let go of that idea that we can do all of it all the time. And if we don't, then we're not good enough, because that's just not realistic, is it? I mean,
No.
it's not the real world.
No.
And it doesn't mean that we're a bad parent. So a long-winded way of saying, no, I'm not the perfect parent and I never will be. And I don't think anybody will be.
But I thought it was really interesting because when you reached out to me, Kim, about coming on to the podcast, this is what you kind of came to me with the idea, is that you wanted to talk about this kind of this gap almost, isn't it? That between knowing what the theory says and the science says, or all that kind of stuff. We know what it says. But actually there is this gap between this is what we ideally should be doing and then the reality of real life. And
Yeah.
I think a bit like you, I often have lots of conversations with parents. I still get it wrong. All the work that I do, and even the work I do around burnout, I burnt out. And I was really, really shameful of that at the time. That I thought I should have known better. But when we're in it, it's really, really difficult. And I think I work quite hard now trying to talk to professionals about just be mindful of the load that you're sending home. Be mindful of what you're asking parents to do because they are already probably at capacity and then over it. And then as professionals, we come in with, well, you just need to do, we'd have to ban that word, those phrases, you just need to for parents,
Yeah,
because it makes me feel like I've got to
definitely.
scream if someone says that to me. So I suppose I'm really interested in this gap and
Mm,
and what we can kind of do about it, I suppose. And I like your bit about letting go of it,
yeah.
of letting go of that perfection. Is that easy to do, Kim?
I don't think it is.
Mm.
I think it's really important. And I think it's well worth trying to do that. It's not easy. I think the guilt that we have as parents is massive. Potentially more for mothers and fathers, but I won't sort of stereotype that completely. But I think there is that kind of mum guilt that we tend to hear about, isn't it?
Yes.
That you feel that you could be doing better. And if you don't, if you say something in the spur of the moment because you're all exhausted and you regret it later, and then you'll think about it for ages going, I shouldn't have said that. I'm a horrible
Mm.
person. I'm a bad mum, all of that kind of stuff. Or, if you're working and parenting and all of those other things, you think, well, maybe I should be spending more time with my children to do this, that, and the other. The guilt is just there, isn't it? And I think that really then adds, doesn't it, to this idea of how easy or not is to let go of all of that stuff, because we are constantly bombarded, aren't we? This is what parents should be doing. We look through
Yeah.
our social media and we see these wonderful examples of what parents are doing, and all of that kind of thing. I'm quite pleased that we're seeing more real life stuff
Yes, it's
on
coming.
social media now. It is, which is brilliant, and I think that will help. But it's not easy letting go because you feel guilty for doing that, and you always think that you should be doing something. You should be doing more. You should be better at this. You should know how to do this. But nobody knows how to do it perfectly. There are lots of things that we know, but actually each child and family are different. They're individuals. The circumstances are constantly shifting and changing. There's lots of different things that we're going through. So no one set of rules is going to work for everybody
No,
anyway.
no.
But I think letting go is something that I've kind of learned is important, to try and let go of the fact that it won't be perfect and that you will get it wrong. Yeah, it's hard to do. But in doing so, and I don't do it perfectly by any means, I still beat myself up quite regularly and say, you would have told someone else to do this. So why are you not doing that? Or that that is going to escalate this situation. So why did you say that? And why didn't you do that? I do that. I still do that. But I do less of it. And I think that's helped, because I think that's made me realize that actually I can just be me a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that helps a little bit with the connection. And I think it helps a little bit to show my kids that sometimes I struggle with it and sometimes I find it difficult. But actually, we can have a hug and we can talk and we can just be with each other. And I think that does help. That again, that's not always easy, but the bits that I can sort of try and be that, letting go of the perfection and the beating myself up,
Yeah.
I
I
think
think
it does
sometimes as well,
work.
it's just knowing about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's knowing that that's what I'm doing, if that
Mm.
makes sense. That I have these horrible feelings, and I know they're all the time, but sometimes we just feel rubbish about ourselves generally. Actually, it's only when you start to talk to other parents that they go, yeah, I feel like that all the time. And that's why I love things like the podcast, for being able to kind of get this out to other parents to go,
Mm.
do you know what? I feel it. Kim feels it. We all feel it.
Yeah.
Even when we're talking about, there'll be parenting, I don't like the word experts, there'll be parenting experts out there. They will get it wrong because, like you say, exactly that. Every single family, their dynamics, their setup, their sensory system, central nervous system, they're all going to be different. And what works in my house won't work in somebody else's house. And I think, even when you think about it, when the kids are very young, and, I remember, and it's how do you get them to sleep? And I just wanted somebody to give me the answer. I had one that was appalling. I thought they were going to have to admit me to a psychiatric unit. I was beyond exhausted
Mm.
with him, and he never slept. And they kept telling me, and there was the cry it out method, there was a this, and
Yeah.
I just kept saying, but what's going to work for him? And they just kept going, well, you don't really know. You'll have to just try it. And as a parent, the only bit of support we really ever get is that bit in the beginning about birthing plans and what's going to
Mm.
happen when you have the baby. The
Yeah.
birthing plans never go according to plan.
That's good.
Then you
They go
feel like
out the
you
window
failed.
anyway.
Yeah, rubbish. Second time round, I didn't even bother making one. So don't make me make it because it failed last time. But there is nothing past that, is there? I think, and I feel really strongly, and I'm trying to get kind of my voice out there, is trying to get support out there for parents where they can just come and go, do you know what? I feel really overwhelmed and I just need to be with other parents and let somebody else. And we've kind of lost that community. We've become
Mm.
very isolated as parents, I think. We're very much behind closed doors, and there's the, hey, everything's lovely, and look at our family photograph, and 2 seconds later, everyone's whacked someone over the head and someone's crying. And that, that kind of, we haven't got that support, and I'm curious how we get that support.
Yeah,
Any
I think
ideas, Kim?
yes.
Can you solve it?
But yeah, let's solve it, shall we?
Yeah,
Let's do
yeah,
that in the next
yeah,
5 minutes. Great,
yeah.
great, great. Um, I think it's exactly that, though, isn't it? You feel like you should know how to do it,
Yes.
and I think that's quite ingrained, isn't it? I think society tells us you should be able to do this. You have a baby, and then you parent, and you do it well, and it forgets the fact that we never did that. That wasn't how we ever parented in the past. We would have had this network of people around us, that whole takes a village to raise a child type thing. But we think we've lost that. And I think, yeah, it makes it hard, doesn't it? Because it makes you think you should know what you're doing, and like you were talking about your experiences. When I had my eldest, there were lots of things we struggled with, and we sort of worked through lots of different things, thought we were doing badly. And then we found something that did work eventually with things like sleep. And then when we had our second, I was like, right, well, we'll just copy exactly the same. And it didn't work. It wasn't, because they're two different children. And you've also got the dynamic of having two children, and that
Yeah.
changes things again, doesn't it? And you think, oh,
Yeah.
I thought
Oh, yeah.
I cracked it with him, but now she's completely different. And you think, oh my God, I'm going to start all over again. Like I said a minute ago, seeing those things on social media where people are starting to talk more realistically about their parenting, I think that is quite nice. One of my friends from school who's got children of a similar age, she's always sending me sort of memes and stuff off social
Yeah.
media that's talking about the realistic side of parenting. And just that kind of thing's really nice,
Yeah.
actually. And I'll send them back. And it's just that, we don't need to say much about it, but it's just that acknowledgement that there is another mum somewhere that is also at the end of her tether,
Yeah.
and you don't feel quite so alone. And
Yeah.
those sorts of things, even though they're small and tiny, actually do make you feel like, yeah, I'm not the
Yeah.
only one sat here struggling.
There was a
Yeah.
meme, when you said that, there was a meme that I saw that, not much makes me laugh out loud, but this one did. And it's a picture, and it's like something, it was some title about helping your fellow parent or something. And there's a person standing on the ice, and there's a gap with some water, and then somebody on the other side. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've
And
seen that
they're
one. Yeah.
trying to put their hand out to help the person out off the ice, aren't they? And they both, one ends up in the water, the other one's flying across the ice. And I thought, that sums it up.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to try and help them, and we both end up in more of a mess. But we're together.
We're together. And yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that it does, yeah, there are loads of great ones. But I think that is the thing, isn't it? It's realizing that you're not on your own, and that
Yes.
actually, you know, even those people that put on that lovely family photo, say how they've had a wonderful weekend doing all these beautiful activities, whose kids always seem to behave when they're out in public and all of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. They will be going through stuff. You know, no child is going to be that model child. No family is going to be that model family all of the time. I was thinking yesterday, I was thinking a little bit, oh, I wonder what I'm going to talk to Liz about. And I was thinking about it. And I was in the kitchen making lunch or something. And my daughter was sat at the table doing some colouring in. My son was doing some Lego. My husband was out doing something in the garden. And I thought, if someone took a picture or a video of us in this moment, it would look like the perfect family. But it only lasted 2 seconds, because then, you know, my son said something to my daughter and then she flew off on the deep end because he said something, and, you know, and then I've got to abandon making lunch to separate them. And you think, actually, you know, but if someone had just seen that 30
Yeah.
seconds, they would have thought, you know, well, they've got it made. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it only lasts for that 30 seconds, doesn't it?
We did something similar when we were away, the three of us, and we did something similar. We sat on the beach, just down on the south coast, and just watching different families. So I'm a bit of a people watcher, and I like to watch other people. And I just looked around these families. You know, there's one crying, someone's hit someone over the head with a spade, mum shouting at dad because he hasn't done something, dad's having a go at one. It was just, and nobody had it together. There were tears, but there were also happy moments.
Yeah.
But there was also kind of some fraught moments in there too. And I think when we just step back a bit and have a look outward, because I think we can become very inward when everything's very difficult, is looking outward a bit and going, actually, not everyone's got it together. Not They
No.
might give me the impression they have, but they haven't. And we're all struggling with it. And I think as well now in this day and age as well, there are different stressors that were around, and I'm not
Hmm.
saying they're more or less, but you know, compared to what my parents probably went through and their parents went through, it changes, doesn't it, with the
It
different
does.
pressures that are on, and you know, family setups and makeups have changed a lot, and often now I think in the majority of families you'll see mum as well out at work, whereas you know my mum was at home for a period of time when we were younger, and that's changed, and the pressures for us, I think, and like you talked about earlier, and even managing our own central nervous system, there are days when I just think if the kids go off today, I'm going to go off like a rocket because I feel awful today. Um, and that's not always easy, kind of managing that as a parent, looking, okay, what do I need today?
Yeah. And I think that's really difficult, isn't it? Because it goes back to all that guilt and stuff like that. And I
Yes.
think there has been a shift, hasn't there, in terms of the expectation of parents. So if, you know, if we let our, 5-year-old go and walk to school by themselves, there'd be uproar, wouldn't there? But then my mum walked to school when she was 5 years old by herself, because that's just what people did. You know, there's a whole host of things, isn't there, that
Yeah.
have changed in terms of the expectation over what a
Yeah.
parent does. And it's very much that message that you are solely responsible for the adult your child is going to turn out to be.
Yeah.
You're responsible for their success, their well-being, how nice they are, and all of that kind of stuff. And yet, obviously, parenting does have a big influence, but there's so many other influences as well. But I think all of that extra pressure in the mix, it does change things, I think,
Yeah.
and it does make us then feel that we have to be there just as the parent, and all of our own needs get sidelined. But we can only do that for so long before we then burn out or explode emotionally, you know, all of that kind of stuff. But I also think that is a little bit harmful in terms of role modeling to children as
Yeah.
well. You know, we say to the kids, you know, it's okay to feel the way you feel. How about spending some time doing some breathing, or chilling out and doing something? Don't be negative about yourself. Look at all your strengths. But we don't do that. I mean, maybe people listening do. I don't do that
No,
often
I'm
enough,
not good
you
at
know.
it at all.
You know, all that kind of, we're meant to do all this wonderful self-care and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at that. But I think if we can't role model to our children that actually we all have big emotions, we all find it difficult sometimes, we
Yeah.
all might have times where we get it wrong or we don't know what the answer is. I think that's probably a good thing, even though we shy away from doing that as a society.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think as they grow up, you'd hope that they grow into parents that aren't going to be parents that burn out, that are on
Mm,
their knees and struggling to hold things together. And I think we talk about that in our family a lot, is that, there are times when I get cross, there are times when I'm sad. Um, and, I don't dump all my emotions on my kids, but they do see a varying array of emotions from me. And I recover from them, and that's really important. And sometimes they'll say to me, "You're okay today?" No, not today, but I will be.
mm, yeah,
I'm feeling a bit down today. I don't know why. I feel really stressed today, or whatever. And actually, it's they start to echo it back to you. So I said
yeah.
to one of my kids the other a while ago, "But you're all right today. You don't. I'm just not feeling very happy today." I was like, "Okay," and he was like, "It just happens." Okay.
Okay.
I
Yes,
just anything you want me to do? No.
no.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I do that thing that I'm starting to feel a little bit angry. I just need a minute. And then last,
Yes.
like, yeah, my 8-year-old would turn around and go, I just need a minute. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, that's, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, well,
But
that's
what a
okay.
great skill to
Yeah.
learn, that it's okay to be angry, because I think there's a lot of work happens around with kids that anger is this thing you've got to avoid. Don't get angry. Be happy and okay all the time. And actually that's totally unrealistic.
Mm,
I get angry about all sorts of things,
yeah.
rightly and wrongly.
And sometimes that anger's good. It fuels us, doesn't it?
Yes.
For some of the things that we feel angry about, we
Yes.
can channel that and we can feel that into doing something
Yes.
productive with it. I mean, obviously there's anger that's not like that as well, but we've
Yes.
got to feel the whole array of emotions, haven't we?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then knowing what you do with that emotion, but how do I manage it when it
Mm,
arrives? Because it doesn't mean I'm a bad person if I get angry. It just
yeah.
means, okay, well, I feel angry. So what can I do about it? And what's the safe way of letting that out, rather than just burying it and hoping that it'll go away and then it explodes like a volcano somewhere along the line?
That's it. And I think there's stuff like that so in kind of the things about inclusive education that I kind of look at and work and all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
There's quite a lot of expectations that we have of children that we wouldn't expect adults to do.
Yes.
And I think that's one of my bugbears. I really don't like that. The things like you can't drink any water when you need, you can only go to the toilet when we say you can go to the toilet, all of those kind of things. And I'm thinking, well, you wouldn't do that if it was an adult. You wouldn't say
If
you
it was
can.
me, I'd walk out. I've been
Yeah.
saying,
I
stop
was like,
me.
you cannot take your school blazer off, even though it is 30 degrees outside, things like that. I'm just thinking, what? We wouldn't do that and say that to an adult. But it's the same things with emotions. That's what sort of the connection my brain just did then, was that actually we kind of almost expect children to have a complete handle on their emotions. But we know that adults don't, and we don't. And
I think
it's
any
the same with
adult
lots of
does,
other
particularly.
things. No, that's it. No one does, do they?
Yeah.
Some of
No.
us might be better than others at it, but nobody's got a complete handle on all of that stuff in the way that we sort of, as a society, talk about having a handle on these things. And it's the same with lots of other things that we expect children to sit in that chair still quietly for however long and listen for however long and not drink water when they're thirsty and not go to the toilet when they need to go to the toilet and all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
That actually, yeah, there's quite a lot of expectation. It's
There
hard.
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that worries me, that bit as well. I get very worried about that, because I think actually
Mm.
that's teaching kids to ignore emotions and
Yes.
sensations, and don't trust that, because actually I've done it, and my son pulls me up. He's brilliant at it. Is I used to say quite a lot when he was younger, "It's okay," and he'd go to me, "It's not."
Yeah.
And I try really hard now never to do that. It's okay. Because in that moment for that kid, it doesn't feel okay. And I think probably if someone told me that when I was feeling really, really stressed and anxious, someone said to me, "It's okay," I'd be saying exactly the same, actually. It's not. I don't feel okay.
Yeah, and I think something that I used to say was, "Oh, it could be worse." And you think,
Yeah.
actually, that's just sort of saying, "Oh, it's not that bad," isn't it? You're saying,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
come
yeah,
on, it
yeah.
could be a lot worse." And
Yeah.
I do say it sometimes, but I try not to, because I think I don't want to belittle what they're feeling
Yes.
just because somebody else might be feeling something that to me would be
Yeah.
worse or
Yeah.
in a worse situation.
Yeah.
But actually that sort of just makes them feel maybe they shouldn't feel that way.
There's that really lovely
Yeah.
sketch. Have you seen it by it's Brene Brown, about empathy versus sympathy?
Yes, I have. Yeah,
when the
yeah.
goat gets down in the hole. I'll link it in the comments because it's just lovely. Because the goat
Yeah,
kind of
it's
goes,
good.
"Well, at least," doesn't she? I
Yeah,
think when the
that's it,
person's
isn't it?
feeling really rubbish, "Well, at least," but then the other person gets down in the hole with them and
Mm,
doesn't try and solve it. It's just there with them.
just
Such a lovely sketch. I love it.
yeah.
I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, so I'll link that in the comments for people. If, say, for example, we've got someone listening today, Kim, and they're having a bit of a tough time and maybe going through that, I'm a bit of a rubbish parent, I'm no good at this, I'm letting my kids down. Have you got a kind of a top, I don't know, like a top tip, but a suggestion or something that you've used or maybe in the past that would help them in this moment?
I mean, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because it depends on so many different
Yeah,
factors. It
yeah,
really is complex. But I think it's that just trying to reassure yourself, and it's easy for me to say this in practice, not necessarily quite so much, but it will get easier the more you do it, is just to reassure yourself that this isn't just you. You
yes,
know, there are every single parent will have at some point, some more than others potentially, will have gone through that stage of, I'm rubbish, I don't know what I'm doing, I've got it wrong, you know, I'm a rubbish parent. I think every parent has been there at some point. So I think reassuring yourself on that. And I think the other thing is that just that reassurance that there is no one piece of advice that's going to work. And that may feel scary because you want that list of
yes,
things, don't you? You want that
yes.
sheet that someone can give
Please
you
tell
when you
me.
have your baby that
Yes.
says, this is how you do it. This is the manual of being a parent. And it doesn't exist. And I think trying to kind of let go of that thought that it might exist is helpful.
Yeah.
So I think the more times you can say to yourself, there is no one way to do this, I think is going to be helpful. And I mean, I look at every time I've got a problem, I Google everything and I read loads about it because that's just the way my brain works. Actually, sometimes that is quite bad
Yeah.
because you open yourself up then to all of this advice and there'll be so much advice about what you should be doing. And sometimes it's framed as this is the easiest thing in the world. And you think, well, it's not because I can't do it. So is that because I'm rubbish? Or you'll just see like 10 different things to do that all seem to contradict each other and you've got no idea which one to pick.
Yeah.
So I think just taking that moment and just saying, okay, like there is no one way of doing this. I'm just going to try something, think about what might work for my child. And if it doesn't go right, it doesn't matter. You're not going to ruin them for life because you've done one thing that might have been better or might have escalated a situation a little bit more than you wanted to. And it is really hard to get into that mindset. But I think the more you do that, hopefully the more that will get ingrained into your
Yeah.
mindset.
Well, and I think,
Yeah.
well, what people can do as well is tag this podcast episode because actually
Yes.
it's quite nice to come back and listen to it and just because that's the thing I think that's helped most for me is other people reminding me it's okay
Mm,
not to get it perfect. That's really helped me. And I think, as you said, the practice has helped and I'm better at doing it myself now. But to begin with, I almost needed that. It came from my partner or it came from my sisters. No, I'm very lucky and privileged to have a really great family and a support network around me that they would often remind me, when I'd be going, I want to go out for the evening and I haven't been out for like 10 years or whatever it
yeah.
is. I want to go out for the evening and then feeling really guilty about it or worrying about when I came back, I knew there was going to be a fallout and not because they were going to punish me, the kids, but because it had been tough for them.
Mm,
And being kind of reassured by my family, you need to go out for you. It's going to be okay. It's not going to injure the kids. They're safe. They might prefer it if you were there, but I'm a solo parent. There's only one of you. So you need to go, have a good time, and we'll deal with it when you come back. And maybe that's what this podcast might help another parent take away from that is that this is kind of almost your permission today to do something for you, however small that might be.
yes.
And it can be something tiny. And I talk about a lot with sitting on my one is sitting on the back door with a cup of tea. And there were times in our family when I couldn't leave the house because things were so difficult.
Mm,
And I'm a solo parent and there was no one to hand over to. So how do I get that time? And that's that gap again, isn't it? It's bridging between the perfection is, well, I'll go out for a nice walk. And I can't. And so what do I do in those moments? It's anything. Find some way, even if it's lock yourself in the toilet for 5 minutes, even though they get notes under the door with my kids. But what could you do? And I think this is your reminder that it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay not to have it all pinned. And what could you do for you today?
Yeah. And I think that's really important. And to remember that, nobody knows how to be a perfect parent. You know, I can talk all day long about SEND, neurodivergence, disability, inclusion. I could talk all day about that. But that doesn't mean that I'm an expert parent, that I can translate all of that knowledge into my everyday, every second of my day. And even the sort of the people that are expert in parenting and will tell you all of these different things, they won't be perfect parents. Nobody will be. And maybe that's something that can reassure people listening, is
Yes.
that even the sort of experts, and we'll put it in inverted commas because I'm
Yes.
not so keen on that word, because I don't think anyone can ever be a complete expert in
No,
anything.
I agree.
Yeah, but even the people that study it, that live it, that teach it, that whatever it is, will get it wrong because, we're all human. And maybe that can be reassuring, that there aren't these perfect parents out there that have got it all sussed, and you're there and you haven't. I mean, they
Yeah.
just don't exist
Yeah.
at
No, I
all.
totally agree, Kim.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is I would definitely recommend going and following Kim. So, Kim, you are on Insta. Are you on any
Yes.
other social media platforms?
I'm on LinkedIn as
Yep.
well.
Perfect.
So they're probably the main two to
Your
find me
main
on
ones.
at the
Okay.
moment. Yeah.
So we'll make sure that we have linked those in the show notes so people can come find you. I know you do some
Thank
great
you.
stuff on LinkedIn around inclusion, accessibility, all that kind of stuff. So neurodivergence, definitely worth going to give Kim a follow and soak up all her
Thank you.
knowledge, because she does have some amazing knowledge there as well. All that leads me to say, Kim, is thank you ever so much for coming on. This has been a really good chat, actually. I was really pleased when you came on and asked me to talk about this. And this was your idea. It was nothing to do with me. This was Kim's idea. That I thought, what a great one, actually, that gap between knowing the stuff, but actually putting it into practice. And it is
Mm.
hard. It's really hard. So I'm incredibly grateful that you came on. And yeah, we'll see everyone soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, Kim. Take care.
Just before you go, I just want to give you a quick reminder that if you want to follow me on Instagram, the podcast has its own Instagram page, the Untypical Parent Podcast. And if you fancy maybe being a podcast host, I also have an Instagram page for the Untypical Podcaster, supporting those of us who feel like we maybe don't quite fit the podcasting mold, but really fancy trying our hand at podcasting. Make sure to go and follow me on those, and I'll see you at the next episode.